And Kyrut said, when it comes to thinking, men overlook what life wants them to overlook.
And Kyrut said, believing that your particular life is trickier than most people's is one of life's great tricks.
And Kyrut said, secondary reality keeps track by giving man memory.
And Kyrut said, the Eastern time zone moves so quickly that Rocky Mountain believes things are coming apart.
And Kyrut said, without seriousness or sadness, or at least some melancholy, most people have no reason to live. Hey, said a man, does that give you the blues or what?
And Kyrut said, seeing that he too had showed up for his own mental party, he sighed, well, I can't really complain. If I'd really wanted to have any fun, I wouldn't have come here in the first place.
And Kyrut said, without the belief in a struggle, no one would struggle.
And Kyrut noted, one man's mind looked in the mirror and said, no doubt about it, we all start out overweight.
And Kyrut noted, if ordinary people are not being told exactly what to do, they don't believe they're being told anything. Then Kyrut gave the advanced version. If ordinary minds aren't being told exactly what to think, they don't believe they're being told anything of value.
And Kyrut noted, everybody suspects what's going on.
One old sorehead said, it seems to moi that degrees and academic fame are just simplistic validations of the fact that you don't have to think anymore. Upon hearing this, one young girl thought, upon my word, what then does death ratify? And not real long after that episode, someone wrote into our show, congratulations, young Kyrutians, well done. For some time now have I searched for a televised program that would forthrightly use the word ratify and join together the concepts of stupidity and death. Congratulations and well done again. Sincerely yours.
And another viewer writes, dear Kyrut, is it possible you could just go... And another viewer writes, dear Kyrut, is it possible you could go just one show without mentioning the dead? Dear sir, yes, if they would quit watching.
And Kyrut said, once the civilized gods realized what hormones were up to, they decided to become the gods of civilization.
Then Kyrut offered this pop question for the class. Under what conditions can an addendum, an afterthought, an explanation be an excuse?
And Kyrut said, bullets don't apologize. People do.
At musing time, which for him was all the time, this one man's gray cells had this thought. A revolutionist is just someone who doesn't want to presently be the last in the intellectual food chain.
And Kyrut said, seriousness is like a gel that gums up brain passages.
Several times a week, this one man would call himself up on the phone and in a pseudo-mechanically sounding recorded type voice exclaim, Congratulations, sir or madam, you have won a free prize. As soon as this was read, one man's mind told him, "Say, don't you get any ideas from this? Things are bad enough around here as it is."
And Kyrut said, "Another reality visiting this universe noted, it's surprising the number of people who whip out their ID if you walk in a room and say, 'Okay, stupid.'"
From our viewing audience, this note: I don't believe there is a Kyrut. Congratulations, sir or madam, you have won a free prize.
While standing at the edge of the dance floor, gazing up toward the deserted balconies, one man thought, "Curious, there's never been a holy book written by a man alive."
And Kyrut noted, in the city, the creatives seem most so when they're dead.
And Kyrut said, "One man's new hobby is that he's going to read every single word in his unabridged dictionary and have at least one thought about each of them. He also says that if he lives long enough to complete this, he wants them to have at least one thought." Read again. And Kyrut said, "One man's new hobby is that he's going to read every single word in his unabridged dictionary and have at least one thought about each of them. He also says that if he lives long enough to complete this, he wants them to have at least one thought regarding each of his thoughts." And the males bring this letter to the advice doctor. "Dear doctor, if I knew, psychologically speaking, how my brain worked..."
Physiologically.
Okay, start again. And Kyrut said, "One man's new hobby is that he's going to read every single word in his unabridged dictionary and have at least one thought about each of them. He also says that if he lives long enough to complete this, he wants them to have at least one thought regarding each of his thoughts." And the males bring this letter to the advice doctor. "Dear doctor, if I knew, physiologically speaking, how my brain worked, would I be any better off? Dear sir, probably not. No, strike that, Miss Belansky. Make my reply read, 'I don't know, sir. What do you think?'"
The speaker in the park declared, "Everyone has their own talent and is faithful to their societal duty." And a chap in the crowd called back, "Even the Philistines?" "Especially the Philistines."
And Kyrut footnoted the above. Thus it is that no matter what your taste in painting, looking back over your shoulder, a Rembrandt always seems preferable to a Pollack.
Then Kyrut footnoted himself. If Mozart came back to life today, he would not compose in the Mozartian style.
And a correspondent writes, "Once you understand what history is, you don't have to make a hash of it." How true, good correspondent. Human institutions and collective thought need no help from individual men. Quite the contrary. The other way around, might I say. And a revolutionist, overhearing all of this, thought, "I said I was getting out of here, and now I mean it more than ever."
And Kyrut noted, if things went as fast locally as they do universally, there could be no neural revolution.
One man says there's only one thing left in life that frightens him: the possibility that people who act seriously actually are.
One spring day, the three different brothers were talking, and the first one said, "My pleasure comes from others. my displeasure too. And the second one said, my displeasure comes from others, my pleasure from myself. They both then looked at Brother 3, who said, you guys are nuts. You know that? But they did not. For they are but two of the three different brothers.
And Kairut said, if all you know is what you can remember, you don't know enough to be a revolutionist.
Every morning, when he would first look into his intellectual mirror, this one guy would say, some men have it and some men don't. Then later, while shaving, he would often add, God, I wish I was some men or the other. As that wise old philosopher from Galaxy E23 would say, the simpleton mind, given a choice, will always take one. Goodbye, thank you, come again, and close the door behind you.
Then there was this God over in one reality that whenever he was confronted by whines, complaints, or requests for help from the local creatures, would have to sometimes bite his tongue to keep from saying, hey, get original.
And Kairut said, a hermit, a fish out of water, attempted but not.
And Kairut served up another slice of dialogue. First guy, it's hard to live alone if you're ordinary. Second guy, yeah, but if you're ordinary, it's hard to live with yourself. One reality told an apprentice, this roommate finder service is not what you think it is.
And Kairut said, those who don't understand the game of mental self-protection and growth just love the idea of monasteries and timeouts.
Someone from our audience asks, regarding something you mentioned on your last show, wherein a man said that if the sex act were like the little death, then he thought that romantic love based on sex would be the little disappointment. But if so, then what would stupidity be?
Near Borderland, one man's latest theory is the salubrious aspect of being pleased with small things is that it will save you from being happy over large ones. Injects a neighbor, I will not be in mid-flight before my time. The relationship of man and good wine is such that the later cannot consume the former at the same dear expense as the other way around.
And Kairut said, the secondary world is slipping up on the primary in the same way water threatens to drown a fish. One man who heretofore had spent 30 years not having any original thoughts asks, is it now too late to stop all over again? Sir, if you're getting your money's worth, yes.
City occupational update. If you truly believe that things are getting worse, you can become a priest. If you believe they're already bad enough and you don't want to work on holidays, you can become a politician. If you believe it when all the others say how bad things are and you want to work sitting down, you can become a TV anchor person. Okay, if you're a would-be rebel, maybe you should just take a might-be going out of business position until the mothership gets here. I'm not positive, but maybe.
A person asks, as regards this revolution things, again, a person asks, as regards this revolution thing's ideas about the uselessness of being serious, I've now got it whittled down to just me. Now what? Press on, my child, press on, press on.
A man on the street corner was attempting to address the passing crowd with these words: "For any of you poor souls who actually believe that man is civilized, and even getting more so, just consider that this very day, even as we speak, throughout the world there are more wars taking place than there are poetry readings." And one passerby thought, picking poetry readings was a bad example in my case, because to tell you the truth, I'd prefer the wars anyway.
"Hey," said the guy, "I'm back. Remember me? I'm the guy who's not impressed with what anyone else has said more than once."
And Kyrut adds his reminder: "Without men being susceptible to what has gone before, there is no civilization. Without the ability to turn therefrom, the revolution is but a dream."
And Kyrut said, "Whenever a revolutionist believes that something is a contest between him and some other human, particularly in a secondary sense, he is already the loser. Particularly, hell, you know full well by now that that's all we're talking about."
One rebellious old guy would never admit he was depressed or disappointed. He'd just say to himself, "I have a temporary hormonal imbalance." You could say that it's not very original, and you could say it's not all that odd, but what you can't say is that you can remember to do it.
Whenever the local creatures would do something that wasn't immediately understandable, this one reality's buddies would try to get him to criticize them. But he'd always resist and say, "No, it's proof of something."
And Kyrut said, "In this one kingdom, those who actually controlled things allowed the people to periodically vote for candidates from two different political parties to apparently select who would rule them. But both parties and all of their candidates were, in truth, secret minions of the real, unrecognized powers that be. This all went so well that the planet itself took note and therefrom derived its own method of crowd control by introducing an even larger illusion of opposing forces via the concept of good and evil."
And Kyrut said, "Once a rebel has become a real revolutionist, he is like a man with an indelible bullseye painted on the inside of his eyelids."
And Kyrut said, "Another guy's latest notion is that life created the ultraviolet area of the electromagnetic spectrum just to make us feel bad."
And this communique from someone who has been catching these programs: if proverbs and ancient wisdom are irrelevant, then why do so many ordinary people believe otherwise? You can't beat it. Another question that answers itself.
As he pushed him out the door, one old man told the kid, "Go on then, but remember, if you're going to be serious, always defend your mind and its ideas." This type of advice is what is known as unnecessary.
As he leaped to his life from high atop City Hall, one man exclaimed on his way up, "As dogs have fleas, I have ideas." Science and civilization are the art of scratching.
More conversations with the advice doctor. Dear doctor, do you have to be educated to be a revolutionist? Hell no. Do you have to be sophisticated? Hell no. Do you have to be talented? No. Do you have to be intelligent? Well, I believe you're about to push this too far.
One king declared, "No man with serious questions regarding the sacred seriousness of life will ever marry my daughter unless he has several million pounds in ready cash or CDs."
And from the vast cable network and from our vast viewing audience comes this vast letter. Dear Kyrut Said Show, although I feel sure you're using the term symbolically, I must admit that I am still somewhat uneasy over your constant reference to tumors, specifically brain tumors. I say this from no position of personal self-interest, since I do not have one. But it is not totally unthinkable that someday in the future I might. Signed, one who believes you could have more concern for your audience.
And Kyrut said, when one guy realized he had viewers to his own TV show, he told them all to call in, then put them all on hold. And one of our viewers writes, "I believe things would go much better if you would use more modifiers so as to give a more distinct sense of where and how your comments fall in time. E.g., he continues, the simple insertion of the word finally before realized in the sentence above would personally have added a great deal to me. Perhaps I'm alone in this regard, perhaps not. Yours, a viewer."
One man says, if my blood didn't rush directly to my brain with all that stuff, maybe I'd have some control. And the crowd, growing more excited than ever, began in unison to shout back, "Maybe, maybe," and like that.
One Saturday afternoon, after a number of wine coolers, the Southern Hemisphere of this one world up and said to some other sippers, that serious and stupid start with the same letter is no mere accident, my friends.
And a viewer inquires, well, if the revolution is not serious, then what is it? Hey, old dude, you getting close.
Beyond any religion's concept, one man defines God as someone who can't be tortured. My guess is there are rebels who'll want this for themselves.
And Kyrut defined a revolutionist, refined idiocy.
Then, for additional seditious clarification, Kyrut noted, besides what the ordinary refer to as being serious, there is what we might call a more complex version. The difference being that in the latter instance, it is done because one wants it done, not because it must be.
And Kyrut said, over in a small, semi-discreet segment of this one reality, whenever the local prevailing triaxial force would, under threat of punishment, direct the creatures to do something they didn't want to do, they would send out a man who would, sans any particular emotion, shrug and say, "Do what you think's right."
Boy, can you turn the cool air down? Instead of opening tonight, for the last two times, instead of doing something from historical context or from doing the good old Southern Protestant thing that we did a couple of nights ago about something that happened on the way over here to use real life, I was thinking about knowing, because all of you got to be good enough now to go way past irony into where the secondary world actually begins to merge in a certain way, to try to carry on our grand tradition now of the third night. It's a grand tradition of some sort of little opening. How about this? It's an actual little historical thing. You can read it in books or magazines. But remember, get past any idea of irony. That's not the point. And the people is not that important, except you got to use somebody as an example, remember. As a kid pointed out in Kairut recently, you don't have to call ordinary people. They're not stupid. You don't have to call them that. And his buddy pointed out, well, you got to call them something. It had nothing to do with this. Should I even press on with this? Some of you, I'm not going to be able to warn enough, especially out in TV land, to say has nothing to do with irony. It has to do with life. I guess sometime we're going to have to write a whole pickup truck full of Kairuts having to do with things that apparently are ironical, and to point out that that is like seeing smoke. That is like seeing bad reflections in life from your own. Remember, all this is a reflection of something, and then you got your own reflection of a reflection. It's this. And it's always the sense of irony is also a reflection of one of the Kairuts tonight right there toward the end of this one place, if you recall, that the powers actually be, the ones really ruling this kingdom. This always gives people, crude people who have some idea of conspiracy, something new to think about. That there's this group of people, like if they were running the United States, for instance, since that's where we are, I think, that there's this one group that actually own and run the Democratic and Republican Party. And they let everybody vote. It doesn't matter really whether they count them properly or not. Whoever wins, they all work for the same place, but the people think, well, throw those bums out and put in these other new people and give them a chance, and it's the same crowd. At any rate, according to that myth tonight, was that there's one place that they did that, and so the people, those running it, got what they wanted, stayed in power, doesn't matter who's there because they all are just employees of this one group, and the people think, well, we got some freedom. And it went along so well that the planet itself, on which this kingdom was located, decided to expand that for its own use of crowd control, but instead of calling it Democrats and Republicans and political factions, it took what appeared to be opposing forces and concepts and called them good and evil. And so then you apparently have your choice. Well, I can do good, or if I slip up, or if I feel kind of devil may care, pardon this expression, maybe I'll be a little frisky and I won't be all that good. What if? It's like you go in and think, well, I voted for the Republicans last time and look what they did. Screw them. I've been a Republican all these years. I gave them a chance. By God, this time I'm just going to cross over and vote Democratic. And you're voting, it's the same business. Same people own it. What if that was true? That's like people sitting around in another context thinking, well, should I be a good person or should I not? I mean, nobody's looking, should I steal this and leave? Oh, that's not good. This does have something to do with me asking you to try not to fall into the trap of irony. It has to do with the way life is, because if you think that you're voting one way or the other, then you're continually faced with irony. That's why we had, whoever we called him for a while, Captain Irony or Commander Irony, is because everyone is constantly, or half the time, at least, half the time, believe that they're experiencing irony. That is, that things are not coming out as the setup seems to be, the punchline of every joke in life, the payoff of every good effort. It was like a smart aleck joke or proverb from a few years back. Somebody said one time that no good deed goes unpunished. Kyrie didn't do that. Some ordinary person did it. That is ordinary man's sense of how life is, at least half the time. That half the time things end up, and people don't use the word ironic all the time. They say bad, despicable, dangerously, and it's not. It is something else. It is like a letter slipped under your door. But if you got an ordinary brain, you never know what it is. You always pick it up and you read it and you think, that isn't what I was waiting for, no matter what it is. And you think it's ironic, and it's not. Whew. The little intro I was going to, if you'll get it past that, because the man was speaking of what he thought was history, was the idea of education. If any of you remember Jacques Rousseau went to all the trouble. Specifically, he broke down at one time how he thought that children should be raised, that education, the development of the intellect is the only reason I'm bringing this up as that one example, that it was so important, and that civilization itself, the state, all aspects, society, if you recall, he's the one that's sometimes referred to as, he believed in the great animal freedom that should be man, and it's the state itself, it's men coming together and being civilized, that puts a serious crimp in the development, that our souls actually want to be free. And it's society, us being together, that holds us back. He, even if any of you recall from your college days, it's a huge breakdown. Like, well, he went into great details in his writings that from the age of 1 year to 4, that the children should be doing so and so. They should be left alone and physically find their own way to develop. And from the age of 5 to 7, they should be taught kind of compassion and sympathy that they should have for their fellow children when they're out playing. And then from the age of 7 to 11, they're supposed to study the arts, and it goes on. And it broke it down as the ultimate was supposed to be that if a child did have to be civilized, he should be kept out of the hands of the state and ordinary flows of society as much as possible, so he could develop this natural empathy, this kind of animalistic, in the best sense of the word, feeling for his fellow man. And the punchline is that Rousseau had 5 kids and he put them all in an orphanage. Forget irony. Forget, I didn't bring it up for that, like, boy, isn't life done? That's not it. Because the man still has a reputation. It doesn't seem to be any secret. Of his 5 kids, all of them, he put in a foundling home in Paris, turned them over to the state. And you could say, see, if you're ordinary, again, you wouldn't have to say ironic, but if you heard all that, or you read something or heard something about this guy, it doesn't matter who he was, but you heard and you thought, well, I like that. That sounds like my kind of thinking. And then it got to the end, it said, but then he did so-and-so. Then if you're ordinary, then you've got your choice. You can vote. You can think, oh, Jesus, isn't that just like humans? And then you can try and just dismiss, like, well, it's a terrible idea anyway, because you're dismissing the messenger along with what you, up until that point, had thought was a decent message. Or you could go, well, that's got nothing to do with it. It was still a damn good idea. It was just the wrong person had it. It's beyond all of that. Life is life. The secondary world is what it is, and it's only humans. Remember, it's life that is making time, and it's men staying around measuring it and counting the hours. It would be a man to go, put all of his children in an orphanage. Is that not just like men? As though the person saying it, is not a number on the face of the clock. It's like, well, I'm not on that clock. All right, I guess we'll drop the tradition of having an intro then. Here we go. For those of you all know what I'm doing now is, for the Kairos that were read, it's taking these pages that were selected by the members of our viewing audience here, our in-studio audience, and seeing if there's anything additional that we might say about them. Remind me not to ever bring up Jacques Rousseau again. Yeah. Who writes that man's material? Well, I know what happened. He was just mad. And Kairut said, without seriousness or sadness, or at least some melancholy, most people have no reason to live. Nothing to say. Nothing to add. And Kairoot said, everybody suspects what's going on. 2 with nothing to add. Well, I don't want to take enough time. The whole idea of, I guess we have to go a little past religion with ordinary people in the secondary world, the belief in some sort of secret knowledge, secret societies, mystical cores inside of religions and all of that. The whole idea of secret knowledge, expand on it with your own examples, is that there is information somewhere that is so far removed from what ordinary people can conceive of or discover on their own that it would be worth spending one's life, giving up one's fortune, giving up chances for fame. That it is just some kind of knowledge that is so far removed from our everyday life that it does indeed deserve its own name, such as secret knowledge, mystical knowledge. Kairoot simply says, if you couldn't see it, it says everybody, and it's in capital letters, and it's underlined. I think that man ain't got a typewriter. That everybody suspects what's going on. If you took that beyond a mere theory, if you could feel it in yourself, you don't have to look anywhere. You don't have to go out and hire Mr. Harris to do a poll for you. You would know in yourself that the reality is there. You know it within your own nervous system. You can feel it as connected with everyone else's nervous system. That everybody does suspect what's going on. The whole idea of there being secret knowledge, all the way from it being in its most conservative form, which will even make it into history books, that perhaps some of the Buddhist priests, perhaps people somewhere, especially bygone days, the Maya civilization, that there were people that had knowledge that was so secret, that was maybe directly from the great cosmic forces, from the gods, and that it is just so far removed that us modern men, even with the most up-to-date education, are really too far removed from it. We just have no idea what it is. And that seems to have some significance to people, all the way from that to kind of slash and burn journalism today of people believing that, yes, flying saucers are landing somewhere. Not just landing, but they're in touch with some people, and they're letting out secret information to the deserving. It's not just to make fun of that. History is absolutely replete with versions of it, all the way from the conservative Orthodox religions into the more wild and woolly tabloid versions such as that. But it's all the same thing. Like, God, there's some great, to use some of the terms I do or descriptions sometimes, that people feel, God, there's this great itch I have. But where does scratch? It is so far, it probably takes us another lifetime, some other dimension to ever find it. That sounds right. For one thing, it relieves you of any real responsibility of trying to do anything. Like, well, as those great hymns used to go, well, we'll all understand it by and by. When we die, then I'll know the secret. Which, again, it's good that people don't think about that much further. Then I'll know the secret of life after I die. I don't guess anybody would like to think what a bargain that is. Much less what of great use it will be. But what if you can feel yourself that everybody does suspect what's going on? Or at times Kairoot even saying that people are at this show and us playing like with this New Revolution thing or anything you want to call it is so far removed from everybody and nobody wants to hear it much. All that's true. But it's not to say to play the game of, we're so far removed, this kind of information is so esoteric that it's beyond ordinary people's comprehension. It's more like everybody suspects what's going on, but hey, that's enough. I mean, ask ordinary people. You could take ordinary people. You can get one of your uncles or somebody. It's not even religious. And you could talk to them in a certain way. You can start talking about life and things ironic. And then this and that, and then still bring up ironic things, and then kind of draw back and not pick on the people that you were talking about. And you can almost get just your old routine uncle, the old guy that used to be a roofer. Drinks a little every day. You can get the guy. You can start talking about stuff like this. And you can get people to go, yeah, they kind of suspect what's going on. But then if you start saying, can you really understand some of what I'm talking about? And your uncle says, well, yeah, I never thought about that way, yeah. And if you said, I should have talked to you years ago. I know some people that really know something about this that can tell you something real specific about it. And then they go, don't push it. It's like, I got to go. Suspicion's enough. Who the hell wants to know? But everybody does suspect. I am suggesting, nay, telling you that there's a reason Cairo brought that up. Everybody does suspect what's going on. They do. But that's enough. Nobody wants to know anymore. It's not an attack when we make examples about religion and the things, and me pointing out that historical footnote about Rousseau and education, family relations. None of that's shocking. I mean, I know people in the ordinary world because you've got to do something. You've got to play like it's Family Feud or some kind of TV game. You've got to act excited. Like, boy, what's the world coming to? But all this stuff of me pulling out examples about environmentalists, how in the world, we're going to destroy the world, which has got to be one of the greatest jokes in the world. And it's not to pick on life that they're stupid. If in some way you could grab humanity and make them come to some temporary, just momentarily moment of extraordinary lucidity and say, do you realize it's impossible? Fleas cannot destroy the elephant. And that's not even the best example, because if it was, elephants give birth to fleas. They produce fleas. And then to say, well, fleas are going to destroy elephants, you'd get people's attention for momentarily. That is, they suspect what's going on. But the point of religion, the point of civilization, the point of the secondary world, in a sense, is to keep it there. Because who the hell wants to know? There's another Kairoot hat tonight. Without the belief in the struggle, men would not struggle. And Kairoot said, some of those connected with other stuff. Okay. This does have some significance. And again, it's one of these that I'm not sure it went over all that directly when it was read aloud, not the reader's fault. And Kairoot said, the speaker in the park declared, everyone has their own talent and is faithful to their societal duty. And a guy in the crowd hollered back, even the Philistines? And the guy said, especially the Philistines. Continuing, the next one. Then Kairoot footnoted the above. Thus it is that no matter what your taste is in painting, looking back over your shoulder, a Rembrandt is always preferable to a Pollock. A representative painting, a nice conservative, square one, no matter how well, that's what Kairoot means. If you look over your shoulder, you look to the past. If you're still connected, as you should be, to the continuity of things, no matter, you could be the world's most fervent supporter of modernistic, especially non-representative painting. But if you look over your shoulder, that is, all of humanity is always doing that. No matter what your taste is individually at that moment, looking back over your shoulder, everyone, and the individual has nothing to do with its life, but everyone finds a Rembrandt preferable to a Pollock. Because you start looking at the past, you don't want to turn around and see some kind of something that ordinary people might say, what in the hell is that mess? Another version, they used to say that in the foxholes during wartime there are no atheists. The guy would just be running his mouth and just talking like hell and cursing the gods and talking about how many women that's not his wife that he's going to screw when he gets home, get off the battlefield. And suddenly the guy is shot within seconds and he's pouring blood. Suddenly the man goes, has anybody got a Bible? Has anybody? When you start looking over your past, nobody wants to turn around and see a painting that's like somebody threw up on the wall. When you start looking at the past, not individually, not humanity, civilization, people want to turn around and they want to see a nice, sane, reasonable, like painting of Jesus on black velvet, like you'd have in your house trailer if you were back home where you belong. This is still connected The guy said, even the Philistines? He said, especially the Philistines. And then this one, looking back over your shoulder, no matter your taste in painting, a Rembrandt always seems preferable to a Pollock. And then Cairut footnoted himself. If Mozart came back to life today, he would not compose in the Mozartian style. I'm going to refuse to say anything. Still connected. And finally, in this quartet of papers, a man writes, connected to those other three, once you understand what history is, you don't have to make a hash out of it. Hint, 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 hint. In other words, fill in the rest of it yourself. Once you understand what history is, you don't have to make a mess out of it. You don't have to cut it up. There should have been, of course, some other guy right in and says, once you understand how your mind operates, and then there could have been an addendum to that somebody said, don't push it. This, I didn't point it out when we put the papers together, but I guess some of you heard it, was actually sort of connected. There was one way down here at the front that says, more or less, I won't look, but it went, Eastern Standard Time moves so quickly as to make Rocky Mountain feel like things are coming apart. And then this is about 20 pages later, and Cairut said, if things went as fast locally as they do universally, there could be no neo-revolution. There's a reason. If everything went as fast at one level as it does at a larger level, at all levels, there'd be nothing to do. Also, when you understand that, there's no longer any theory about, well, shall I look down my fellow man when at times I know, without any doubt, in strange ways, I just know that I see things clearer than they do. Those poor little sons of guns. Those poor little retarded people. Give yourself a break. Get a job. If everything went as fast locally as it does universally, there would be no revolution. It couldn't be. Yes, but I'm a big fish. What it amounts to is when you say that, the tacit part is, I know what you also, the part you think you're saying is, I'm a big fish, smart fish, I'm a big fish, and then you think you're making a comment about lesser fish. But what you're saying is, I'm a big fish, I'm a smart fish. God is the water dumb. Right. It doesn't do to go head to head with an intellectual combat with people who can think like that. Not me, I'm not that dumb. They win. Another little group here, somebody asked for one, but it went like this. Another one of these, I guess it's hard to, I'll here, read it for you. And Cairut said, it starts out and it's sort of a definition, the way it's written. It has a word, and then it has a colon, and it has the definition. A hermit, colon, a fish out of water, ellipses, attempted, but not. Is that too strange? A hermit, a fish out of water. But what it's saying is, people who believe this are trying to be a hermit, where they're doing it physically, overtly, which it still fits, it is metaphorical, it's not just symbolic. But then even here. But the attempt to be a hermit is an attempt to be a fish out of water. And you can try it. But think about the consequences. That even, well, you know the consequences, literally, a fish out of water, if a fish decides, I've had enough of this. And he decides, I'm going to be a hermit. It's not just you can't leave other fish, you got to leave the environment. And so I think you all understand, I don't give us the blues, us fish lovers. But if a fish gets out of water, he's not a hermit. Oh, you can call him a hermit, but you're going to have to put a modifier with it. He's going to be a late hermit. A human can apparently, though, what? Get away from other people and not die. Really? I just read them, folks. Well, here's a connection. A hermit, a fish out of water, attempted but not. And Kyrut served up another slice of dialogue for those of you, it's low-fat dialogue, I think. First guy says, it's hard to live alone if you're ordinary. And the second guy says, yeah, but if you're ordinary, it's hard to live with yourself too. And a reality told an apprentice, who I assume was looking in on some of these things about hermits. The reality says, this thing, these kind of roommate finding services, are not what you think they are. And the last in the series, those who don't understand the game of mental self-protection and growth just love the idea of monasteries and time out. Well, I've been sick. I haven't been feeling well. And Kyrut said, a person from our audience asked, as regards this revolution thing's idea about the uselessness of being serious, this guy says, I've got the seriousness thing whittled down to where it's the only thing left is me. Now what? Kyrut had a comment, but some of you remember what it is. If you don't, make up your own. You understand, some guy is saying that he's taking what he assumed was our ideas, or Kyrut's, that there is some sort of less than total profitability in being serious in the ordinary sense. And so this guy, evidently, says he has pursued it, and says he has narrowed it down, that he's evidently cut out all the seriousness in life, just ordinarily speaking, except for one area, and that's the seriousness about himself. And he says, now what? Let's all, do that and play like, oh. Somebody just wanted to hear that one again. It's about it's like the eternal, what seems to be the conflict of the secondary world trying to slip up on the primary, civilization trying to take over, all of our good Papa Freudian, decent, sane psychological aspects trying to overcome our crude Julius and Augustus, Caesar, Hannibal drives. But there was some guy on the street telling people, he was telling them, if you think that life is actually civilized, especially if you think it's getting more civilized, just consider this. Right now, right this second, all over this planet, there are little battles. All the way from little ones, Yugoslavia and Lebanon, to big ones. But there are more wars going on right this second, warfare, bloodshed, than there are something decent and civilized like poetry readings. And the guy that heard it thought to himself, he picked a bad example, because me personally, I prefer the wars anyway. I'll leave it to you. Of course, you don't have to worry about a guy on the street and somebody thinking that to himself. All you got to do is ask yourself. All of you look fairly sane and civilized. At times you would sit around, and if prodded at all and thought about it, or if somebody slipped out of the woodwork or jumped up behind a curtain and asked, would you be interested in life, just generally speaking, would you prefer to be around poetry readings or someone discussing philosophy, or maybe just attending a concert, or being able to visit a art gallery? And you go, yes, yes. But other times, if somebody would start pointing out those possibilities and almost simultaneously hold up the menu, it was column A and column B was like go to the wrestling matches, or have a few drinks and run across somebody that pisses you off that's a lot smaller than you. Have a little physical, play a little, let's dance with my fist. There are times that you'd go, shit, I'd rather fight. Screw a symphony. I mean, not all the time, but yes, but the really civilized, which somebody in a Kyrut one time, I think, insinuated had some possible operative connection to stupidity, but the really civilized will insist, no. Give me a poetry reading every time. Which I guess is good for the poetry readers. See, if that were not true, just think, we'd have even more people out of work. It's bad enough having cab drivers and TV repairmen out of work. But think if you had poetry readers out of work, out there on the street. We're asking for serious trouble, folks. Worse than having pool tables in your town. Or worse yet, having some out-of-work TV actor in your hometown playing Professor what's his name? What was his name? Huh? Harold Hill. I knew it. And Kyrute said, whenever the local creatures, I'm just going to read this because I think it got hard in the airways. Whenever the local creatures would do something that wasn't immediately understandable, this one reality's buddies would try and get that reality to criticize them. And when they're doing things, it didn't make any sense. And he'd always resist and say, nah, it's proof of something. But I know that none of you would be so audacious as to ever apply that to yourself. Well, I might if it was ever applicable, but I'm certainly not going to do it when I do something incomprehensible and dumb. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm on reality. It's up to the water, which is always more stable than the fish, to at least give the fish some indication of, there, good sir, straighten up. Do right. The fish really appreciate it, too, if you'll notice in life. That's why they use the oceans as a freelance restroom. 60 seconds. Are we going to make it? Another definition. And Kyrute defined a revolutionist, refined idiocy. God, I'm glad we're out of time. I don't want to touch that one. And Kyrute gave additional seditious clarification having to do with much seriousness. Talk about seriousness tonight. Here is his clarification to the rebel, not to the ordinary viewing audience, I guess. Quote, besides what the ordinary refer to as being serious, there is what we might call a more complex variation of being serious. The difference being that in the latter instance, it is done because one wants it done, not because it must be. That is a difference. Good night. Yes. Okay. People in the other cities and you people here, just a little something. Anyone do it here, and you people in other cities, anyone who would like to, do get a few requests from out of town. I know it gets sticky for you to see, get the tapes months later or whenever you get them, and then write in. But some of you write in asking if I'd say something else, so I had another idea. And everybody here, anybody who wants to in other cities, if you got an idea on anything, you decide that some subject in life, and you realize, but now it's not an attack, I'm not going to look at it and laugh. Not unless it has something to do with flying saucers or God or taxes or your career, nah. But if there was something that you thought would be an interesting subject, just, could be one word, a whole sentence, write it down and send it to me. And here's what we'll try to do for the time being. Either I'll say something, if I can think of something to say, pertinent, about it, or I'll take it and make a Kyrute out of it. And then that night, if nobody requests it, I'll make a note of it, and then I'll play like it was requested. Anyway, and then I'll make a comment on the Kyrute. But I'll turn in, if you just send in some subject, what do you think it of? Just something in life. You don't have to defend it. But just write it down, and I will, most likely, if I find that I want to, is I'll turn it into a Kyrute, and then we'll wrestle with it after that. And one other thing. It's been a long time for some of you out there on tape in other cities. I guess it's more than a long time. You didn't even know it ever happened. But of me trying to talk directly, or it would seem to be, I guess, give advice or stuff to do. But now it's been several years, and so some of you should be in better shape. But things continue to pop up, and it's not just to do with a specific example, but it's just another one that comes up periodically, and we're faced with it, or I was again. But let's see if it'll work. I've said the same thing before, but things, with some of yours, things are different. There's been a whole lot of bridges under the water, huh? Well, there better be, or your goddamn hormones are still staying there trying to spit off the bridge. All right. But it's just a prime example between thinking in a certain way and what ordinary people could even hear and misconstrue what we should be meaning, what you should hear of me trying to describe something. Here's the, for instance, fear. And it starts out like good, and it would seem to be well-based primary physical fear, such as fear, let's say that you're confronted with, for the first time in your life, that you go to a dentist and he says, listen, you have got to have serious root canal work. You've got, and first time in your life, you've got to have all your wisdom teeth pulled tomorrow morning. You got to, or you're just going to get sick, you're already infected, something like that. And so you find yourself frightened. Your heart is pounding, you get nervous, you get sweaty, and no excuse. Don't tell me that your mother was scared by a dentist. Forget all that. You simply find yourself that you're nervous. Ooh! And you take it quite seriously. Now the thing is, it's a common one that pops up, but I want to redo it after all these several years. Because ordinary people can hear this, and it sounds like some kind of phony baloney street corner advice or philosophy, and they take it one way, and it's not. It's almost the opposite. And it goes like this. If I was going to give somebody a suggestion, a serious person, and they said that, then I would point out, all right, you can hear about that, and your heart pounds, and you're nervous. Okay. Done. Then let us say that whatever it is, there is no doubt, even after you hear it, and you have this immediate flush of, I'll die. You realize you're going to have it done. I mean, you quickly, I guess, run through the